So we're gonna make some concrete thing. We're gonna cast it into the ground. So I dug a hole. My hope is to put this hideous terracotta planter in it, kind of like that, and I'll have this like a blobby concrete thing with a terracotta planter poking off of it. And with this type of concrete casting, our mold is just a hole, and we're just gonna dig it up when it's done. If you want like a pristine concrete thing, like a concrete countertop, they usually make that so that they can disassemble their mold. But if you want a thing that just comes right out, you have to have draft, which we'll talk about in another video. Concrete is really heavy. So this is an 80-pound bag. I'm not gonna mix this whole thing, first of all, because it's gonna be too much. Kind of as a rule of this, it usually has a key how far this bag is gonna go. This would do a 2 foot by 3 foot by 4 inch thick slab, which usually concrete doesn't go as far as you expect. Like if you're trying to make a driveway, you'd need hundreds of bags. But for this, it's gonna be more than we need. We're also gonna mix it in a bucket. So rather than me pour that whole thing into the bucket, I'm gonna cut it open. I'm gonna shovel in some scoops into the bucket, mix some water, and go back and forth. And I have found through experience that unless I'm planning on mixing an entire bag, I can't really follow the instructions for mixing water because it's so hard to measure the volume. So you kind of just get the feel for it. You don't want it mixed nearly as thin as like plaster. It's gonna be pretty thick when you're done. Unless you're like truly casting and trying to get high resolution stuff, and that's kind of a different animal that you probably want to reference some YouTube videos or something for. So I'm gonna tear this open. One thing to be aware of is this is really messy. So you don't want to do this inside. All right. And we're just gonna take a few scoops and we're gonna pour it in this bucket. And you can see concrete is Portland cement, sand, and gravel. I could probably, if I wanted this to be really strong, I could probably stand to mix a little bit of sand in it, but it's gonna be so thick, I don't think it's gonna matter. And this bucket, or this bag, actually sat in my garage. And one day it got a little rain in it, so you can see the bottom is actually set a little bit. We'll say we're gonna mix up that much to begin with. That's not gonna be enough to fill this thing, I don't think. But because we're mixing it in a bucket, it's pretty hard to stir it perfectly. So I'm gonna start by adding a little bit of water. And we're gonna go in there with the trowel. This is different than plaster. You have a way longer open time. And so the annoying thing with a bucket is since the bottom is got corners, a little hard to mix. I'm gonna add a tiny bit of water. That was actually probably more than I needed for just this. But I'm gonna add more concrete anyhow, so I'm basically moving around and trying to uncover all the stuff that's still really dry. Now, one thing that's kind of important, all right, is we could use that. That could be a fine consistency. When you see like really smooth concrete, they apparently people who like do concrete work say bring the cream to the top. And what'll happen is if you trowel it enough, some of the cement rises to the top, and that's what makes it smooth. So adding a bunch of water to this is gonna make it appear smoother, but it's not gonna give you the best results later. So I'm actually gonna say I'm pretty happy with that. I'm gonna add probably 2 or 3 more scoops of concrete, mix a little bit more water in there just because I know that's not gonna be enough. But that consistency looks pretty good. All right, I think that's good. So we're gonna trowel some to the bottom of this hole here. And I did my best to make the bottom of the hole a little bit flat, but I'm kind of wanting this to appear as if it was cast into a hole dug by hand, you know? So if it's a little sloppy, that's kind of my intent. Now how it's got like little voids in here, that's where fairly common people will add Portland cement to this.
which will make it flow a little bit better and fill all these holes, these little voids. You don't want to do too much. Yeah, I may have to mix up a little more. I'm gonna have to mix up a bunch more. You can actually see as I compact it, I mentioned the cream rise to the top. See how it's starting to look wet again? And that's because what this is doing is forcing all the air out. And you can see, look, it's starting to like get excited again, kind of. So just like this general part, you want to kind of compact it down there. And what you're hopefully trying to do is kind of, the cement is basically the glue, right? The rest is all aggregate, which makes it stronger and takes up space. In compacting it is hopefully filling all these little cracks left behind, hopefully getting the cement to kind of wander into those cracks and get it all up. And it's not as much about like pressure as much as it is just kind of like exciting it a little bit. So you can see just like tapping it a little bit is going to excite it. You can see, look at how it's like the whole thing's starting to gel again and become kind of liquid again. And that's working all the cement down into all those cracks. So I'm just going around tamping it down, trying to get all the little voids out, and you can see it's kind of excited this area, so it's wet, you know, real wet through there. And I'm trying to get that to achieve that everywhere, but it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't, I don't think. I don't think this is going to crumble apart when it's dry. And then I'm going to take the remainder I have left. I'm just going to like haphazardly put it on top to make it so the top texture hopefully matches kind of the rest of the thing. Because the rest of the thing's going to, you know, take whatever texture the ground, the hole I dug, imparts on it. I would ideally like this to be a little bit, you know, that's maybe too wet, but a little bit less chalky than it, or sandy than this, but it's not like we're making a building here, so I think we're gonna be okay. So I'm gonna take the rest I've got here, and I'm just gonna sprinkle it around there. We have a pretty like silty, sandy soil here, so the hole is like kind of crummy. If we had like really, you know, clay soil, we could have made this hole like sculpted almost in shape, so it would take on like a different kind of characteristics depending on the region you made it in. If we made it like closer to the ocean than we're here, we maybe wouldn't even be able to do it because you can't really dig with that good of a hole. So I was hoping for a little bit more like structured earth, a little bit more clay-like, so I could have like designed the hole I dug, for lack of a better word. But I think this will still turn out. So yeah, tomorrow we'll come back and dig this up and see what it looks like.